You know exactly what you should be doing. Contribute more. Spend less. Start earlier. You've heard this advice 100 times, and somehow retirement savings still feels impossibly far away. Here's the strange part. The real answer isn't that you lack discipline. It's that your brain was never built to plan for a version of yourself that feels, quite literally, like a stranger. Let that sit for a second. In 2011, the neuroscientist Hal Hershfield ran a study using brain imaging to compare how people think about their present self versus their future self. He asked participants to imagine themselves decades from now, then scan their brain activity while they did it. The results were startling. When people thought about their current self, a specific region tied to self-related processing lit up strongly. When they thought about their future self, at retirement age, that same region activated more weakly, sometimes at levels closer to how people's brains respond when thinking about a complete stranger. Your future self, the one who actually needs the retirement savings, doesn't fully register in your brain as you. Why would evolution build something so seemingly self-destructive? The answer connects to how differently the present and the future used to feel for almost all of human history. Immediate needs, food, shelter, safety from predators, carried existential weight. A threat 40 years away simply wasn't something the human brain evolved to prioritize, because 40 years away rarely mattered for survival in ancestral environments. Life expectancy was short. Circumstances changed constantly. Planning that far ahead wasn't just unusual. It was often pointless. The brain's reward systems developed around near-term outcomes, because near-term outcomes were what actually determined whether you survived to have any future at all. Have you ever found it strange how easy it is to plan for next week, and how genuinely hard it is to plan for next decade? There's a second mechanism layered on top of this, and it comes from Hershfield's follow-up research, where he had participants interact with age-progressed, realistic renderings of their own future faces before making savings decisions. The results were dramatic. People who saw a realistic image of their older self allocated significantly more money toward retirement accounts than people who didn't. Simply making the future self visually real, instead of abstract, was enough to shift real financial behavior. This suggests the problem isn't laziness or lack of understanding. It's a vividness gap. Your present self is impossible not to picture. Your future self usually isn't pictured at all. Then there's a third force, and it comes from the same research that explains why lottery winners struggle and why payday clouds judgment. Mental accounting, from Richard Thaler. Thaler's work on retirement specifically showed that people consistently treat their future selves as a separate financial entity from their present selves, almost like planning for someone else's expenses rather than their own. This is part of why Thaler, along with the economist Shlomi Benartzi, designed a program called Save More Tomorrow, which didn't ask people to cut spending today at all. It asked them to commit now to save a larger percentage of future raises, money they hadn't received yet, and therefore hadn't mentally claimed as theirs. Participation and savings rates under this program rose dramatically compared to traditional retirement plans, precisely because it sidestepped the painful present versus future conflict entirely. Have you noticed it's much easier to commit to saving money you don't have yet than to save money already sitting in your account? Put these three findings together and the picture becomes clear. Hershfield's brain scans show your future self barely registers as you at a neural level. His age progression studies show that making that future self vivid measurably changes present-day financial behavior. And Thaler's mental accounting research shows the present-future conflict can be sidestepped entirely by targeting future income instead of asking for present sacrifice. None of these point to a moral failing. They point to a structural mismatch between how your brain evaluates time and what modern retirement planning demands of it. Why does this mismatch hit so hard specifically now? Because retirement itself is an extremely recent invention. For most of human history, and for most of the world even today, there was no multi-decade period of planned non-work supported entirely by savings accumulated years in advance. People worked, in some capacity, for as long as they physically could, supported by family and community rather than by a personal investment portfolio built from a distant, disconnected younger self. The entire concept of retirement savings asks the human brain to do something it has essentially never had to do across almost all of its evolutionary history: sacrifice for a stranger wearing your own face for decades from now. So what actually works, given all of this? The research doesn't point toward more willpower or more financial education alone, since Hirschfield's studies show the gap is really about vividness and psychological connection, not information. Making the future self feel real through visualization, through concrete milestones, through simply picturing that person in specific detail, measurably improves saving behavior. And Thaler and Bernardzi's Save More Tomorrow model shows that removing the present tense sacrifice entirely, committing future raises instead of current income, sidesteps the conflict almost completely, letting your present self feel like it's giving up nothing at all. Next time retirement savings feels distant and abstract, resist the urge to blame your discipline. Try picturing that person specifically instead, not as a distant financial obligation, but as someone real, sitting somewhere, needing exactly what you could set aside today. Your brain was never being lazy. It just never evolved to recognize that stranger as you.